Thanks everybody for coming, and echo everything that Jordan said. I'm Molly Wood. I'm a longtime tech journalist. I recently added climate to the tech part of my job. I host a podcast called Everybody in the Pool that's about climate solutions. So I am here with that in mind, the climate impact of all that food that gets thrown away. You can actually hear Jordan on today's episode. We did some synergy. Nicholas is like, hot damn. So I'm super excited. I'm going to actually just dive right in and have the panelists introduce yourselves so we can put names to voices, and I'll start right here with you.
Cool. Hi, everybody.
Who are you? What are you doing?
Cool. Yeah. My name is Kayla Abe, and I have a restaurant called Shuggies here in the Mission.
Awesome.
Thanks. But yeah, we're a climate solutions restaurant that features upcycled ingredients across our menu. So often that's cosmetically irregular or surplus produce, byproducts often from manufacturing, offcuts of meat. But yeah, we're kind of, I think, one of the smaller solutions, like hyper local in this group. But
my name is Rachel Konrad, and Shuggies is my favorite restaurant in the world. It is incredible. Please, if you haven't gone there yet, please try it. It will really blow your mind, makes you really think differently. Everything from the menus to the food itself and the crazy wine games that they pour down your gullet. I mean, it's just amazing. I've been at a venture capital firm for the past couple of years. Before that, I spent 5 years at Impossible Foods. Shout out to all the Impossible people, who came, and that's where I got to meet Jordan Schenk, who really was transformative in getting that company launched. And before that, I worked for Elon. Who's that? Elon Musk, don't you know? At Tesla. So I've kind of, born and raised in Detroit, and really thought, if I'm going to decarbonize the world, you got to start with transportation. And I thought that was actually the right path until I met Pat Brown at Impossible Foods, who told me that's not a drop in the bucket compared to eliminating animal ag and transforming the food sector. And he was right. So really spent the last several years of my career trying to decarbonize ag.
My name is Nicholas Bertram. I'm CEO for Flashfood. I've been at Flashfood for about a year now, actually just over a year. And before that, I grew up in the grocery industry. So I started out like an undergrad, part-time dairy stocker, ended up running a company that was doing about $8 billion over on the East Coast. And so I've seen a lot of amazing things over the years. I've seen a lot of horrible things over the years. And Flashfood was the solution to two things, actually, that were horrible. So thank you all for being here today.
Hi, guys. I am Tamara Pattison. I'm the Chief Digital Officer at the SaveMart companies. Not quite sure how I found myself on this panel of coolness, but I do want to hit Shuggies on the way home. So I have had the great opportunity of meeting this team, and I'm super proud of launching the Flashfood product at our 44 Lucky Stores. Find a Lucky Store near you. So thanks for having me.
I mean, I just found out that this is in the Lucky Store near my house, so I couldn't be more delighted about this. Let's set the stage. So Jordan set this up a little bit in terms of impact, but I think it is useful to restate how bad, and as one founder I know puts it, like our stupidest problem, right? Waste is our stupidest problem. You mentioned, Kayla, like the climate part of this is super impactful for you. Can you talk a little bit about that? We'll just go around the panel talking about the climate impact and then the food insecurity impact.
yeah, before this restaurant, my partner and I had this pickle company, and we started here at the Ferry Plaza Farmers Market. But we really came into this issue of food waste from like a community perspective. We would just see all of the waste that farmers had to deal with because people weren't willing to purchase certain things that looked cosmetically irregular, or they had surplus that they needed to get rid of. There were a lot of different factors. There was one farmer who was getting kicked off their land and had to just uproot everything all at once, and they needed to sell it immediately. So we saw all of these issues happening on a super local scale and decided we could do like a little something about it. So we created this company taking in all excess produce and cosmetically irregular stuff, And then kind of after that, after the fact, learned about the massive climate impact of food waste and climate change. So really started from this super grassroots, like interpersonal connection with people. But the impact is massive. And I think just more and more studies have been coming out, the UN stating it as one of their main development goals. Project Drawdown, I think many of you have heard of, named it one of the most impactful ways we can attack climate change. But yeah, it happens. We've just been learning that it happens at so many different scales, and there's so much work to do. But it's absolutely one of the stupidest problems. I think the 40% happens at the consumer level, which is really crazy too to us. So most of what we do, in addition to sequestering all this food waste, is consumer education, trying to get them to understand this issue and engage with it at the restaurant and see that it can be delicious and fun. And yeah, we try to change people's mind through just feeding them great things.
And then, Rachel, what was the argument that made you go, okay, transportation is a drop in the bucket compared to this?
Yeah, I find myself saying this a lot. Pat Brown was right, basically, right? I mean, when I first met him, I met him at a climate conference in 2015 in Paris, and I was there with my former boss, who was the head of a car company, and I thought, well, you've got to decarbonize transportation, sorry. And it is true. I mean, I drive electric vehicles that are powered by solar panels in my garage, right? And that's all well and good. But frankly, the biggest impact that I can have is through what I eat. And unlike with a car, the average American owns a car for about 10 years. So once you buy it, it's a sunk thing. Like, you're not going to make that decision again. With food, you have minimum 3 choices a day, 3 chances every single day to make the right choice, to eat a sufficient quantity, not too much, to buy a sufficient quantity, not too much, right? And so you can actually use consumer demand in a much more powerful way to make an immediate positive outcome for the environment. And the problem that I sadly realized, like, even if every single person in the world bought, one of Elon's Teslas immediately for their next car, we still have a problem, which is 2 billion cars on the planet. And they all use fossil fuels. And that's not going to change, even if every single person bought a new EV today. Food is very different, and it's a much more immediate lever. And so if we stop wasting the 40% of food that we just trash, turns into methane immediately, then that's actually going to be an immediate positive impact on climate change. And we can all do a lot about it, right? Unlike in other industries, unlike in the energy sector or anything. I mean, say what you want about direct air capture or others. Like, it's great. I'm glad people are solving that problem, but there's not a lot that a consumer can do, right? Whereas with food, we really have the power in our hands together, right? So one of the things I was going to mention, when Kayla first introduced herself, she's like, it's just one restaurant. And I'm like, that's exactly the point, right? If everyone did that, we would be fine. So don't apologize for that, because our individual choices, in particular when it comes to food, really send a signal to farmers, to producers, right, to grocery stores in a very profound way that even in the car industry, it's not the same, right? So food is truly the biggest lever we have. And we've only got like 10, 12 years to solve this thing. So it's the most powerful one that we should all be exercising as well.
And then Nicholas and Tamara, I know you have horror stories. So I'm going to, what have you seen that, and Tamara, I'm going to come to you on inequity too, but what did you see that made you say this solution, as opposed to creating something all brand new, is where we should start?
Well, it's always fun to create new things. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's a beauty in things that already exist and finding a great use for those. My story, it goes back to when I was a freshman in college. If you've ever been in a back room of a grocery store, and I know that we have, some store managers in the room right now, and you see the compactor and you see where things that are out of date or damaged or whatever else has to go into, and you smell that, and then you think about how many times you pay to have that compactor pulled out. And then sometimes, if you're really lucky, like I was as a junior person in that department, you get to go clean the pad underneath that compactor, which may be one of the most disgusting things ever. And even that is not as gross as what's happening once it gets into the landfill and completely breaks all the way down. So it's a horrible thing to have to do. Running a grocery chain of 200 stores, it's also a very expensive thing to do. So why not stop ordering too much? Like, why not sell it before you have to throw it away? And what I learned and what really inspired me was that doing the right thing for humanity also makes you more money, because the pickups that were having to happen. There was one store I remember, they were going from having to pick up once a week to pick up once every 3 months. That's a material impact on what happened. And think about what that means inside of the store. And that was not just Flashfood. Flashfood was part of it, but it was also a lot of other things. And that's what I love about innovation and just like bringing great ideas, like what Kayla did. She's brought innovation and made what I think is the best pie that I've had, actually. It's a delicious pizza, and it's a little bit different all the time, depending on what she can get. Anybody can do that. It's not always about building the next big flashy idea and trying to get on a cover of doing that. In fact, that in and of itself is wasteful. Use the things that are around right now and make something better out of them.
Yeah, so fun fact is Nick is a grocer that got into tech, and Tamara is a tech kid that got into grocery. So he gets all the great stories from the grocery stores. But I would say like the thing that was most compelling to me when I actually was approached with the idea was much more about food insecurity. So I live in Berkeley. I'm a Bay Area native. I see hungry people every day. I see them in our stores. I see them at our schools. I see them walking our streets. And as a grocer, knowing all the things that Nick just talked about, that we're throwing this food away, in a lot of our communities, we are actually partnering with the growers. They are members of our community. We know this product is something that they've put their heart and soul into. So it hurts. It hurts every day when you put that into the compactor, even if it is stinky. And we knew that there was an opportunity for us to do more. We already invest a ton today. We support our food banks. We do California Safe Soil. We do Divert. There's a lot of things that we do. The exciting piece of this technology was that we could actually help the members of our community, those shoppers that are already in our stores, actually feed their families nutritious, wholesome product. I do think there's a lot of education that consumers can go through around best by date, sell by date, freshness date. All of those dates are great dates, but they don't actually reflect whether or not this product is safe to consume and whether or not this product is nutritious. And when you see a kid who's food insecure, when you see a mom talk about the fact that she's going to skip dinner tonight so that her kids can eat, you really want to do something about it. Every single one of our stores now has a solution. In our Lucky 44, we're going to roll this out across the chain. We want to make sure that the families in our communities have an alternative to something other than skipping dinner tonight so that my kids can eat.
How many people here are familiar with Flashfood and what it does? Most, not everybody. Can you give us a rough overview? We're not going to spend the whole panel on Flashfood. I want to hear everybody's solutions and ideas, but give us the rough overview, and then Tamara, talk about the implementation, just so that we have a real sense of how it's working on the ground.
A rough overview would be taking a discount rack and putting it on everybody's phone. That's probably the easiest way to talk about it. It's an app that connects grocers that have surplus or near-coated product with consumers who want to save money. Oddly enough, everybody wants to save money. And so Flashfood was invented by Josh is our founder, and it was really about taking something that was waste and turning it into something that's good. What we've learned over the last few years, though, is exactly what Tamara said. That wasn't the most important problem that we were solving. We were actually solving food insecurity. We're actually solving a need for individuals. And not everyone who's on the platform is in that state. Many just really love the sport of saving money. But that's really what it comes down to. We're a marketplace. We're an app.
So what's really great about it from a store perspective is we're already dealing with this product today, right? So we're shrinking out product today. One additional scan actually scans the product into the app and immediately makes it available for sale at a discounted price. The nice thing about it from a consumer perspective is you know exactly what's in that cooler, right? There's a produce box. I can look at the picture of the produce box. If I don't like bananas, I don't have to buy that one. I could buy a different one that's all about vegetables. you see the actual product image and you're able to purchase it and then go pick it up on your schedule, right? So I don't have to be there to actually see that product. I can see it online, I can buy it, and then on my way home or my way in to work, I can stop by and pick that product up. The nice thing about that is that you don't have to change your natural behavior. You can shop at your local Lucky, and then you can go in on your own schedule, and sometimes you might pick up a regular price product as well. So our stores that have already launched, some of them have shared stories with us about shoppers that are already in our stores. They learn about the app and they've said, you know what, now I have a really big family and now I can feed my family higher quality products because I couldn't afford produce before. I just didn't have enough money. So I had to buy cheaper product so that I could make sure my kids were full. Now I have an opportunity of feeding them fresh produce, right? You can do that and save the world at the same time. You don't get those kinds of opportunities very often. And so for us to see this opportunity and all of the economics associated with the business that Nick alluded to are just kind of like the icing on the cake, right? I can help feed my community, I can help the world, and my business runs more efficiently. That's pretty compelling.
Rachel, you and I have been in the tech space a very long time. And I have been newly in the investment space, and we are all about a hot new widget and a hot new gadget. Mm-hmm. We are on the eve, as many of you, of course, know, of the Rethink Future Food Tech Conference, and yet we are having this party because there is not a waste tech track. So I'm actually going to repeat that based on the look on Nick's. There's not a track for this at the Rethink the Future of Food Tech Conference. Where have we gone wrong?
Well, I think that I speak as somebody who's spent the past 2 years working at a venture capital firm. I don't have any, scathingly disparaging comments about it. There are a lot of things that the VCs get right, but I also think that their predilection is for big projects that are like chest-thumping geoengineering projects and seeding the clouds so that we can change the weather and, things like that. And I just don't think that, averting waste is very sexy. And to me, it's the ultimate oversight, right? Because when I hear Tamara talk, I'm like, why wouldn't every single grocery store in the world do this? Because I gotta presume that virtually none of the people who buy Flashfood boxes come and then just leave with their one $5 box, right? They're buying a big basket full of other stuff. So it's a huge win for you, and you're getting new customers. So I don't understand why more grocery stores wouldn't do that. At the same time, it's not this classical venture capital backable kind of endeavor, which is about brand new value creation, right? That's what the VCs really want. And since it's not, it's diverting a waste stream. That's just not sexy, unfortunately, for Sand Hill Road, right? And so I don't think that's ever going to change. Props to, is Chuck here? Chuck Templeton? Props to S2G for recognizing this. One of the very few VC firms, thank you, Chuck, for recognizing it, but most just don't get it. They would much rather build something de novo that gets them on the cover of Time magazine, and you know what I mean? There is a macho element to it, and there is we want to go from 0 to 100 kind of thing. Diverting a waste stream is just not cool, unfortunately. I think it really comes down to that.
Nick, you're just not, I feel like you got to jump in here. You're just nodding along like I know. But at the same time, it is also arbitrage, right? Aren't you, you're not only, Tamara's not only saving groceries that you would have lost money on, you're making money, and you probably would have lost money paying for them to be disposed.
Yeah,
make the economic argument for
it's costly to throw things away, right? It's costly to do that. It's a bad idea. Nobody wants to throw things away. The actual experts are back there, the ones that are running the Lucky brand and everything else, but nobody wants to do that. You don't want to touch, every time that you have to touch a product again, you're losing money, and grocers don't make much money. It's very, very thin margin. And so anything that, for Tamara as the CDO for the SaveMart company, to bring in a new technology, it had to pass something, right? We weren't buddies before this. We are now, right? But it had to make sense economically. It absolutely makes sense if you're a store manager, because you want to see people come in I was talking to Sergio, who launched it as like one of the first stores, and seeing the same people coming back. Like, it's exciting. And then, by the way, they don't just come in and get that. They'll go shop and do other things. So, yeah, it makes sense. And there are other great companies. I think Mill is here as well. Like, we use that in our house. We call it Earthworm. That's what the kids name it. And, like, you can do things all across the value chain. There are people who do a great job of helping have better orders, better sell-through in the store. We're part of that. But to Rachel's point, like, it's actually a big friggin' track. I don't know why it's not in future food tech, but, you know, I'm going to find out because I'm going to go there the next few days and see what else might be there. It's what people should be thinking about.
I also okay. So I don't want to get on too big of a rant here, but I also think that we're in such a late stage culture of overabundance and excess that we don't even recognize the waste. Most people, when you ask them, what do you do that's wasteful in your life? Some of them are starting to think about fast fashion, you know, it's torching the planet, all that kind of stuff. They are starting to think about what they drive. They are starting to think more about solar panels, but they don't even think about their food. And I think to the extent that those who do, they think like it's just food. It's probably just turning into compost worms. Actually, no, it turns into methane and causes the global sea level to rise and will flood us all out of San Mateo, San Carlos, Santa Clara, San Francisco, right? It's actually the worst thing we do. But, you know, America pays the least for food relative to our income of any country in the world. Right? Any country in the world. So we literally don't value food. So why would we value the waste, right? And I think when you think about VCs, to your original question, venture capitalists, they're billionaires, right? So the last thing that they're sweating is the money of food, right? Like they just don't think about a $5 box being a solution to anything. It's just not their world. And frankly, it's not Americans' world. You know, anyone who goes to Europe is horrified at the higher pricing of everything. And then when they think about the lower income of the average European, they're even more horrified, right? But that's just how we operate. We're freaking out about shrinkflation with our Snickers bars, right? But we don't even think about the 40% that we just throw away. It's a joke. So, yeah.
And there's so much fear around all of that we've been conditioned in for so long. Like, I know we'll talk later about short-coded products, but even, you know, we open ourselves up to a lot of flack from people. We're public-facing. People can, like, come in and eat our food and tell it's a shit. But, I mean, we know we have a great menu, and it's funny to see people say, like, you know, that pepperoni, like, there's something just weird about the pepperoni, and we're like, literally, the pepperoni is the one thing that's perfect that we just, like, buy normally. But it's, like, there's no food waste pepperoni. But it's, people are just so conditioned to fear anything that's not perfect. And it is still very counterculture to be thinking about waste as an alternative revenue stream. We also, like, on the other side of that, talking about the economics of all of this, farmer compensation is something that we always are thinking about and talking about. And them being part of this value chain is really important to us as well. All of the farmers that we work with, we compensate fairly for all of their produce, so we're not getting free stuff from them. We're often having to fight them to pay them more for their stuff because they're like, just take it, it's gonna go to the trash anyways. But I think a huge part of creating a sustainable system here is them also being valued for the time and inputs that are already going into all of their products, and making sure that they can do their job so we can all continue to eat.
Well said.
Great. You have opened up the two lines of questioning that I have for you. One is, tell us more about the restaurant and where you get the food and how those economics work out for you.
Yeah. A lot of the stuff we source directly from the Ferry Plaza Farmers Market here. So it's awesome to work directly with farmers. We're just having conversations with them every week or every couple weeks about what's new and what's going into season or out of season. It's extremely low tech, actually, in that it's all interpersonal, and we just text them or we see them in person, or sometimes they don't even have text for some reason, so we're like on Facebook Messenger, like reaching out to people. But it's this very complex web that we're just always trying to dig and do all of this detective work to figure out what waste is coming up. So yes, a lot of it is picking up directly from farms here. Another part of that is using byproducts. So we bring in byproducts of manufacturing. Caroline from Renewal Mill is here, formerly Renewal Mill. We use their product. It's an upcycled oat flour. That's a byproduct of oat milk making. They make a ton of other amazing products too, but dehydrated flours from byproducts. Things like that. We use a lot of our own waste in-house, so we're making sure we're reducing our own impact as well. And then there are just random things that come up too. Like this, a few weeks ago, we just brought in all of these chilies from a farm, Boonville Farm, and they just didn't know what they were. They were like field cross chilies, and they couldn't market them in any particular way. So they're like, would you like to take 200 pounds of that? So now we'll have their field cross chili oil for like 3 years probably. But it's a huge variety of things, and it's always kind of interesting, weird detective work. And I think now that we've been open 2 years now, or 2 years in April, and people are now coming to us and telling us what they have, which is really awesome. We've worked with a lot of larger companies too that are in growth mode, and food companies that are in growth mode, and they're just trying to stock retail shelves, and they don't want to ever be out of product. So they have all of this surplus that they're generating that doesn't end up making it to retail. So things like that. It's a huge, you realize that everyone has waste in some capacity. It's just getting them at the right time and seeing if it's a right fit at the right scale.
I want to ask you 10 to a trillion questions about recipes and like how you're saving food when it's close in. We're just going to do that. But before that, you brought up this other really important facet of all of this, which is the storytelling, the kind of convincing, the understanding that, we all know that there's like a cultural divide between people who care about the expiration date and then people like me who are like, did you smell it? But it does still, you all just learned a lot about my Midwest roots. If it smells fine, just eat it. But it's a hard thing to overcome. Like you were talking before the panel about your Yelp reviews, and people just who haven't even been there being like, ew, trash. Talk about this, I'm opening up to this whole panel actually. Let's talk about having to overcome this kind of cultural weirdness about thinking that food could ever be thrown away.
I mean, for us, we just lean in like really hard into it. Like trash pies are our name, and we like call it out everywhere. So it's like, we're getting out of it before you can bring us down about it. But, our space is over the top. It's like this maximalist, weird monochrome space. Because we're like, we have to give people a reason to come eat waste in our restaurant. So there are a lot of things that we do to try to prep people for that and bring them in other ways, because some people do still come in and they think we're like an Italian trattoria, and we're like, surprise, we're like really not that. But we have to, we're constantly trying to tell that story through our menu and through our Instagram and all of this stuff in hopes that people will maybe change their habits in daily life. And it's like a really long game that we're working on, but I'm very heartened by all of the solutions that we're creating on these many different levels to maybe change someone's behaviors further down the road. But yeah, as I was saying before, the majority of waste happens at the consumer level. So we can do as much as we can as one restaurant, but really we're not going to change anything unless people start internalizing all of those values themselves.
How are the rest of you thinking about that? Tamara, we talked a little bit about this. Let's go all the way to the best buy date and the sell by date and the expiration date, and Nicholas, and talk about how much of this is a barrier to disposing of food well, even on the donation level, let alone the consumer behaviors around it.
You should start.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody recognizes that there's a lot of confusion out there. I'm actually super excited because I think that a lot of the kids that are really active in the thrifting world are going to get really passionate behind this. So I have two daughters. I always am like, hey, let's go to the mall. And they're like, no, we're not going to the mall. We're going to Anastasia's. We're going here. Like, they spend a ton of time thrifting, and they do it not only because they absolutely hate fast fashion, but they don't want to look like everybody else. They also really get a lot of social cachet when they're out there saying, like, look at my haul, right? Like, I spent $15 and I got 7 things and I'm saving the planet. And I think this is right up their alley. These kids know best by date, sell by date. They understand all of that. They know that this food is absolutely nutritious, but they also understand the aspect of sustainability. They do want to save the planet. And I think that they're going to get really active in this cause, right? They know that there's opportunity for them to eat great product and to do it on the cheap and to share it with their friends and do it all on their mobile app. I actually have, kids that go to school in Berkeley, and if you go to Berkeley High, like, the bell rings, you have 23 minutes to get out the gate and to the local place and pick up your food and get back. I wish we had a Lucky store in downtown Berkeley just for this use case, because they would be on the app. They would absolutely have their boxes done. They would be down there picking up the product and back at school. And we actually have a store in Concord. We did a store walk for our holiday. Bobby and my Lucky team back there, woo-woo. I was like sitting in the parking lot. We were waiting to do the holiday walk, and all these parents are dropping off their kids. Well, there's a high school a block away. They don't want to go through all the congestion of dropping off their kids, so they drop them off in our parking lot. And I was like, I wish I could feed all these kids breakfast and lunch. Now I can do that, right? We have an amazing bakery, an amazing deli, an amazing grab-and-go location there, and a lot of that product ultimately ends up in shrink. Now these kids can buy it online, walk over to the store. We can absolutely have 2 associates out there handing out the product, or they can pick up, their breakfast burrito in the morning. And I think that is where a lot of this will ultimately take hold, right? This is a community of people that we know that are out there, and certainly our food insecure folks, those families are going to drive it. But I think a lot of the younger generation is going to get behind it, and hopefully we'll have 10 more Shuggies restaurants out there, and they'll be doing something really unique, because it is the way of the future, and it is cool to eat garbage, I think.
Mm-hmm. Me too. That's good.
I mean, I love a room full of people who are like, yes, we are garbage eaters. Let's go.
Let's eat some garbage.
Nick, talk about the storytelling. We were talking a little bit before the panel about how TikTok is this really strong channel too, right, for sharing recipes.
It absolutely is. Lou, who's smiling right now, she's our social media manager and does an amazing job with TikTok. She's never allowed me to do that. That's not a channel I'm allowed to have any influence on, and that's okay. Maybe one day. But it's really our shoppers. Like, they're the ones
He's mad about it, Lou.
No. Lou's the boss. But it's fun. It's a game. It's like, all right, what can I make out of this? What is it? It's like a Top Chef kind of a moment. That's my very favorite content that I see. Whatever, and I'll go on every now and then, whether it's on X or whether it's on Facebook, whatever. People are so proud of what they've made with what they bought. Like those produce boxes that are back there, like that's going to inspire some recipes tonight from all of you. Because I know you're all going to take one, right? None of you would want to throw anything away, and you're all going to take one of those boxes that we got for you. You're going to lead by example as you leave the room with a 5-pound box of amazing food. But it's cool. It's cool to see that. And that is what I like to, that's joy. If anything, at Flashfood, we're trying to make groceries joyful. Right? It's fun to save money. It's even more fun when you know that it's doing something that is really good for others. And that's what it is. If we go to the example, though, that you're talking about with like co-dating and everything else, we talked about it, so I'll go ahead and say it if that's all right. Like, if you're a store manager, you've got like 150 teammates that you're leading, open 7 days a week, got 15 to 25,000 shoppers that are coming in. You've got 45,000 different individual items on 45,000 square feet of space that you're trying to manage perfectly at all times. Because God forbid anything be wrong, anything be out or anything else. And then if you've got natural and organic products, guess what? They don't have preservatives. So you know what they have? A shorter life. And if you are in a health department and you want to make sure and like get fines and catch people doing things, where do you go? You go to that particular area. And I share that just to say, like, no grocer actually wants to throw things away. That's not what anybody wants to do. But you also don't want the scarlet A up on the front of your store because you had an out of date or anything else. So the stigmatization that's happened has it's just not a good thing, right? It's not a good thing. And it probably had well intention, or maybe it had poor intention. I'm not really sure, because if I wanted to sell a product and have turns and it didn't move much, I might invent some kind of a term that says it's best buy now, or most enjoyable buy, or all these other different terms. Consumers are the ones who drive it, though. And so if a consumer decides that they are going to use things, guess what? They're going to change what their expectations are inside of stores. But I always want to be defensive of grocers in this space, because nobody wants to throw things away. And that's why a solution like Flashfood, that's why I chose it when I was running a grocery chain, because I didn't want to throw things away. But I also cared about individuals who needed to save money. There's another stigmatization that takes place sometimes on like the type of tender that you use. So those who use government assistance, whether it's SNAP or EBT, they oftentimes don't have access to things like this as well. And so we have a partner in Forage that is actually helping us with that too, so that we can bring that in as well, because it's beautiful, wonderful food that everybody should have access to. So, yeah.
Rachel, let's talk a little bit about the tech and waste tech, because in this kind of, we are just at the tail end. How many of you are startup or connected with the investor space at all? Less. Everybody knows Flashfood. A little less on. So we're at the tail end of a boomlet in climate tech investing. Waste to value was, for a moment, I would argue, like a hot topic in investing. Are there tech solutions here? Like you have talked a lot, and there are ag solutions. This is fundamentally a marketplace, right? A digital marketplace for moving these goods. Like, how do you see tech fitting into some of these solutions? Maybe boomlet aside.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we are well past the boomlet, right? I mean, you just have to drop in for 1 second with Chuck from S2G. Is he still here? I don't know. Go with any venture capitalist to future food tech. They will be bombarded with founders who have 6 weeks of runway, 2 months of runway, who've already done an 80% riff. And then they did another 80% riff, right? I mean, it is a complete desert wasteland for food and ag tech. And it's not because there's some, revelation where it turns out that food and ag tech doesn't need to be reformed. It's fine just the way it is. Everyone knows it's a gigantic cluster, right? But we've lost that sort of sexy appeal, right? You have to think about VCs almost like, and again, I don't mean to disparage them, but like, you have to think about them like little kids playing soccer, right? They're just following this ball, right? And like peak ZERT bubble 2019, 20, 21, they were all like, oh, food tech, let's go into it. Just like we went into SaaS and, all this other stuff. WeWork, right? What a great idea, right? And then the bottom falls out. No investor, really, with very few exceptions, is investing in this space. So almost every week, we see another company that has a great mission, that was started with great intentions, whose mission is frankly still just as valid as it was 2 years ago, going out of business or into ABC or getting bought for pennies on the dollar or doing these horrific recaps on the entire team. So the employees' options are worth nothing, right? And the thing I get asked a lot from founders, like, when's it going to come back? And I hate to say it, but it's not. This is the reality. It doesn't come back. VCs work in general in 10-year cycles, right? The funds are 10-year funds. And once that cycle ends, they don't repeat the cycle ever, okay? And I say this as someone who worked at Tesla back in 2008, peak Lehman Brothers crisis. Ford, General Motors and Chrysler had gone bankrupt, right? It was really lean times. And Elon Musk wasn't a well-known character nationally like he is now, but he was very well-known in Silicon Valley. And Elon Musk could not raise a penny from Sand Hill Road, from the epicenter of venture capital. They wouldn't invest in him, okay? So we got a $465 million federal low-interest loan, and then we went public because we had no other way to get money, right? If you can't do that in the food industry right now, That's it. VCs will not save you. So, that's the reality. The beautiful thing about what you're doing is that, guess what? You can get to cash flow break even and profitability because you're just diverting the waste stream. You might not get to Google 800x return on investment from your initial capital, but man, it's a really good business. So I hope more people recognize that, including at Future Food Tech, which next year damn well better have a waste stream entire conference. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let's just reiterate, there isn't one.
Here. It's here. This is it.
Yeah, this is it. We're it. We're the best party in town. Kayla, you have alluded to the fact that what you do is pretty low tech. And I do think that there's something really important to the hyper locality, the relationships. Like fundamentally, food is about people and communities. Is there, like, is efficiency even a thing that you want, do you want an app for this, or is that just never going to be the point?
Oh, yeah. I think that would be great. I think our ultimate goal is to bring more people into this movement so we're not like the weird trash freaks, and there are more people doing it. But I think there is such a large barrier to entry with people. Like people do reach out and ask, how can I get started doing this? And I'm like, well, go to the farmer's market, go talk to everyone, make some friends, hang out there for like a few months, and then maybe something will come out of it. It's like there's no clear answer. And I think it would be awesome to have some other, a way to digitize and systematize all of that. We were even talking earlier with Nick about potentially, sourcing from Flashfood and using that technology that's already in place to kind of write off of those, the extras there. But even my partner and I, we were thinking about a platform and we're like, okay, we're totally not the people for that. So someone else do that, someone figure that out, and we'd totally be part of it.
What kind of platform?
Just something that would
sharing.
Be able to, it would have to
Connecting.
be, yeah, like almost a Craigslist for like waste. And it's all of it, of course, we all know happens on such a quick time scale. Like it's fine one day and then the next day it's about to be trash. So everything has to move on like a 24-hour basis sometimes. Some waste is very predictable and we are able to plan like months out with a farmer if they know like, okay, I planted too much of this thing, so I'm going to have extra cucumbers for 4 months. But oftentimes it's not predictable and they need to move it, within the day. So I think there are a lot of challenges there, but I absolutely think that this is scalable and, we're hoping to do that with more restaurants. We're hoping to do that by bringing other restaurants into the fold.
Yeah, don't panic, Jordan, but before the panel, we may have brainstormed a whole new product for Flashfood that just funnels straight to restaurants. So,
and Molly wants a piece of it, so,
Yeah. I'm going to open up to questions in 1 minute. I have one more kind of question for the panel. What is I asked Jordan this on the podcast, so I have to put everybody on the spot. Where does donation fit in here? Because we are having an equity conversation and we are having a food insecurity conversation and we're talking about diverting waste. And I know part of the answer is speed, but let's talk about how those systems have not, and frankly, maybe could be digitized, right? Those systems have not necessarily solved this problem either. I'm going to start all the way at Tamara. Think of your questions and come back this way.
Yeah, I think that the wonderful thing about this solution, it's so complementary to donations, right? So we still have a very robust donation program. The nice thing about this is it enables us to take away kind of the infrastructure complexity associated with donations. And there is a lot of challenge with that, right? It's the volume of the food. It's how do you get it to the appropriate locations? Do they come and pick it up? This is onesie-twosie kind of stuff, right? You can look at any of our individual stores and see you may have 4 items, you may have 2 items, you may have 20 items, and that level of variability is challenging in the donation stream. So this is so complementary to that, and it then provides a lot of people, the opportunity to try a product that they never would have been able to try or maybe wouldn't have been interested in. So there's also an angle around making sure that everybody has opportunity to explore the store. And I know there's tons of stories that the Flashfood team can tell you about, hey, I never would have been able to afford to throw this birthday party for my kids because I couldn't actually afford to have a cake, and now I did. The other nice thing is, as we bring new products into the store, one of the biggest challenges of introducing a new item is trying to predict shrink. So, okay, if we have a little bit of shrink and we put it into people's hands at a discounted price and they ultimately love it, do they come back into the store and pay full price for that product? Maybe I wouldn't have wanted to pay $8 for a sushi from a grocery store, but I tried it and it's really good and now I love it. So I think there's a huge opportunity for us to be able to, again, complement the donation stream with the variability associated with what the Flashfood product offers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the Food Insecurity Network is very important. Feeding America, great network of food banks. And then there's food shelters and pantries. Everybody is trying to do something. And so when I look at Flashfood, it's taking items that aren't, I mean, you said it, like the logistics, having done this for a while, of taking an individual sandwich, because most of Flashfood is fresh food. It's difficult to make sure you keep temp as you go across through that. One individual item here, one individual item there. When you think of bulk things, like food banks typically like to get in because it is a very, volunteer-driven logistics operation, that there's nothing that's impacted by Flashfood inside of that. It's all augmentation. It's all in addition to. And I love the way you said dignity. Everybody wants to be able to go and buy their food at the store that their neighbors go to, right? Sometimes there's a little bit of, we talked about it earlier, there's shame in getting help, which is awful, and I think we can all change that as well. But yeah, we're part of a bigger solution. We're definitely not in competition with it.
And not everybody lives by those locations. A lot of the shoppers in our stores are actually folks that are taking public transportation. They're walking to these locations. I think we all feel like, oh, everybody has a car. Well, they don't. I mean, our team here from Sloat, there's a lot of seniors that are in that store. They don't necessarily have a car and have an opportunity of getting there. So to have an alternative at the grocery store that they shop because it's in the neighborhood that they live in, which is also sustainable, is really, really powerful, right? And I think if you then take that and look at our footprint, we have 200 stores across 3 chains, Bakersfield to Reno. I mean, there's a huge opportunity for us to make a significant impact in food insecurity and sustainability in our geo. If every local grocer, every regional grocer got behind that, the impact is pretty significant. And it's, again, something that you can do without VC money. Every individual consumer can do that. And I think the food waste point that Rachel brought up is pretty compelling. My kids went to a Camp Arroyo. I don't know if any of you guys know Camp Arroyo, but one of the things that they do there is they force all of the kids to eat all of the food on your plate. And if you don't, you have to scrape it off into this bucket. And as a table, your bucket is weighed at the end of each meal. So that exercise alone makes you realize just how much food waste you have at every single meal. I challenge you, do that for 1 week in your house. Take a big plastic bucket and instead of throwing it in the trash can, throw it in that bucket. You will be ashamed at the end of the week about how much food that you threw away, and you'll change your behavior. So as we as a society become more aware around overproduction and food waste, we are the ones who can fix it. I mean, I was from tech, I love VCs. I spent a lot of time on Sand Hill Road. They are smart, they are fun, but we are gonna fix it, not them.
Amazing. Are there questions from the audience? I named my mill Sarlacc Pit, which is really funny if you're a Star Wars nerd, but actually not that funny because it eats everything forever. That's how much of it is there. No questions from there we go. There's the hands. We'll go here first and then in the back. Go ahead. I'll repeat your question, by the way, for the video if you don't mind.
And I'll speak up. I have a loud voice. So this is wonderful. I'm new to food waste myself, but it seems obvious. Like you had said, it's like the stupid problem. It's very, very obvious. And I'm wondering, in the food waste sector, are people paying attention to the kinds of foods that are wasteful by their very nature in production? Like, for example, I think, Rachel, you mentioned something about meat being or animal products being a big contributor to climate. And I've seen statistics about, 40 calories fed to a cow to get 1 calorie out. And when I think about that, that seems to wildly dwarf the food that we're throwing away. I mean, if people made some sort of a diet change to remove 20% of their meat, that wouldn't that be considered a way of dealing with food waste? And I'm wondering if companies and grocery stores...
Take it.
Do you want to repeat the question also, Rachel? Yeah. So the question generally is, should people also, for the video later, should people also make these dietary changes because there's food that's wasteful just in the process of producing it? Rachel, go.
Why do people eat meat? Yeah, exactly. It's the most wasteful, inherently inefficient thing in all of our lives, right? You could be a high traveling, commuter who is in a Cadillac Escalade SUV, right? And if you don't eat meat, if you're a vegan who drives a Cadillac Escalade, you will actually have a smaller carbon footprint than a meat eater who drives a Toyota Prius or a Tesla, right? That is reality. And it's not just that meat is, we got to feed the cows and we got to make the cows eat all of this, soy and corn and all of the stuff that also has waste streams and byproducts and everything else. And again, it is truly the most inefficient thing you can do with your life is to eat any kind of meat whatsoever. So while I totally, agree with Flashfood that we got to divert the fruit and vegetables and everything else, and that alone does have an emissions toll, the biggest thing that no one really is talking about, with very few exceptions, is the need to eliminate animal agriculture, right? Fortunately, the good news is that slowly but surely Future Food Tech and others have kind of gotten behind that, right? I do think that waste tech in general is this next kind of trend that's going to come up. The fact that it's not featured at Future Food Tech today is what makes it cool. The fact that we're here like renegades, right? But I guarantee you in a couple of years, it's going to be pervasive, just like right now there is more investment in eliminating animals from the food chain, right? So, but you're right. I mean, this is the most important thing you can do if you really want to maximize the efficiency of your diet.
And not at all I absolutely agree, not at all to diminish the importance of vegan diets, but just to augment the impact of waste is that I think this was a Project Drawdown study as well, but reducing the amount of food waste that we generate has a greater impact than a full global conversion to vegan diets. So there is huge impact there as well. I think obviously they both need to work in tandem. And as a restaurant, though, we have decided to still put meat on the menu because mainly for the fact that we want to bring in as many people as possible. So we don't want to alienate people in this transition. But all the meat that we use is offcuts. So beef hearts.
Except the pepperoni.
Except the pepperoni. Except the pepperoni.
People don't mess around with pepperoni.
I know.
But the point is, the thing that I thought was really ironic, because you said the pepperoni doesn't come from a waste stream. And I thought the pepperoni is actually probably the most inefficient thing on your menu.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. And as like a pizza place, like I feel like we have to have it, but maybe one day we'll take it off and just kick that off. But right now our meats are beef heart and pepperoni. That's it.
Can I just say the reason that Project Drawdown says that ending food waste is actually more impactful than ending animal agriculture is because the percent of animals that are in food waste. If people were switching to a less meat diet or a vegan diet and wasting as much food, it would be a fraction of what's going on now. So
yeah. All right, we're going to have that argument over drinks because there's one more question back here. Go ahead.
On the contrary, I would like you to look at a corn stalk, okay? It gets maybe 2 or 3 cobs, correct? Many of us eat that corn and we poop out the little corn, right? We do. And that corn is feed for animals. They eat that. They eat agriculture that we cannot eat. And then they actually produce food that we can. It's called regenerative agriculture. So the whole vegan thing just doesn't work for me. I think we need to look back at the land, back at the way we contribute back into the land.
I mean, I think that what is clear is like food is really personal, right? And it is. I would argue in this case for everybody in the pool, for every solution, that people reducing meat in their diets is really powerful. That regenerative agriculture has a huge role to play. That we should bring people along. Question right here.
Yeah, Nick and Tamara, you were referencing, I think, about the packaged foods, i.e. not fresh produce, bread, etc. Is that a future thing, or does Flashfood currently do that with condiments, snacks, beverages, etc.?
We currently do it. So think of it as surplus. Like if there's too much of something, if there's a modular change, mod changes happen at least 26 times a year. So you're going to have some of those items that are going to be deleted. Primarily, it's for fresh food, though, but there are some packaged that'll be in there.
For example, if you have a passion for Christmas Crunch, our
Yes.
store at 755 Sloat has a few boxes for you. But yeah, I mean, I think, I love the fresh solution, right? I'm a passionate person around food, and I really absolutely believe that every human has the right to eat fresh produce and fresh meat if you want to eat meat, or corn, because corn is also exciting. But we also know that from a food insecurity perspective, a lot of shelf staple product is still very, very valuable for them. It's still a quality product, and it does have packaging, right? So for us to have to take Christmas Crunch and destroy that in the stores is, it's sad, right? When we know that there are plenty of families out there that would love to, celebrate Christmas in April. And so I think you'll see that certainly more and more. And although I think that the traffic drivers, for sure, if I were a consumer that was looking at our produce boxes, that's what's going to drive me in. But is there opportunity to have some of that other product? You bet.
I'm going to wrap us up there because I think we're all now deeply craving Christmas Crunch. I know that I am. Thank you so much to this panel, to this audience. We're going to continue to mingle until like 7, so bring your questions. Thanks, everyone.